Thank you for watching another episode of That Sports Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brandon. So this week was my birthday. I turned 34 on Tuesday. Thanks to everybody for the birthday wishes and all that good stuff. It was a good week. Can't say much more than that. Anyway, jumping into the first topic today. Paddy Pimblett is one of UFC's rising stars. He's a young guy, about 27 years old. He's a lightweight contender, lightweight fighter. And recently he came out and said that, he makes more money outside the octagon than he does inside the octagon. And so he asked the question, why should he fight more than once a year? And the only problem I have with this is, if his only goal in the UFC is to make money, I'm cool with it, But as a fight fan, I want to see him fight more than once a year, because a lot of fighters are lucky if they can fight 2 or 3 times a year. Because first of all, you have to consider that after some of these fights that they go through, they get medical suspensions where they cannot fight. They're not medically cleared to fight up to 6 months, sometimes up to a year, just depending on the severity of injuries and stuff like that. Whatever's going on, these fighters get a medical suspension. So it could be 3 months, 6 months, it could be a couple of weeks, whatever it is and stuff like that. But they're not medically cleared to fight again for X, Y, and Z amount of period of time. So a fighter who, like I said, fights, let's say, January 1, they fight at the beginning of the year, then they get a 6-month medical suspension. They can't fight again until the summertime. Right? And then let's say after that fight, they can't fight again for another 6 months. So like I said, most UFC fighters, they try to get in as many fights as they can because they don't know when they're going to suffer another injury, or, like this fight is the fight game is very, fluid. They can be in the next day and out the next, so it just depends, so a lot of fighters are lucky if they can get 2 to 3 fights in a year. Now, obviously, as a fight fan, we want to see Paddy Pimblett fight more, but if his only goal is to use the UFC as a stepping stone, just as to make more money and become famous and stuff like that, then yeah, he's on the right path. Only fight once a year and stuff like that, save your body, save your face and everything. But, if he's trying to make a run at UFC contender, he's not going to do it by fighting once a year. I'll tell you that right now. First of all, when I check the rankings, he's not even ranked inside the top 25 UFC fighters in the division. Right, I think when I saw it, there was one that said that he was ranked 50th. There was another one that said he was ranked 70th or something like that, somewhere at the 70th or something like that. So it's like he's pretty far down in the rankings. Now, I know that you can climb up the rankings pretty fast, but let's say he does make it inside the top 20. How many years is it going to be before he makes it inside the top 5? You don't just get a title shot because you were winning a bunch of fights down in the rankings where in the 70s or the 50s or the 40s and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to be inside the top 10 to be a title contender, for people to start talking about your name in title contention and stuff like that, like really seriously throwing that around. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't throwing around his name as far as him getting a title shot. Yeah, a lot of people probably do want to see him get a title shot. He's a very talented fighter, but still, there's still guys who are who are top ranked and everything like that, who still deserve a shot at the belt, who are still, floating around in the top of the pool and everything. Not to mention the guys who are ranked, the other guys who are ranked ahead of him. So he's not ranked very high in the UFC. So fighting one fight a year is not going to get him to climb through those rankings. You know what I mean? He's not going to just magically shoot from being outside the top 25 after one fight. It's going to take a couple of fights, and popularity will wane over a year. So that's another reason that he should probably fight at least twice a year. You know what I mean? If he's at least able to, he should set a goal of fighting twice a year. That way his popularity doesn't wane, because just because you fought once a year and you keep your name in the headlines and stuff like that, there are guys who are fighting 2-3 times a year and stuff like that, 4 or 5 times a year. You know what I mean? Like, some of these guys are getting it in. And so, they're shooting up the rankings a lot faster because they're taking on more fights. They're fighting higher ranked guys and stuff like that, and they're moving up the ladder a lot faster than Paddy Pimblett, because if his only goal is to shoot one at a time, it is what it is. But, like I said, that just depends on his goal and his mindset, going forward in the UFC. If he's really trying to be a title contender and stuff like that, I don't see him getting it done one fight a year. If he's trying to be just a gatekeeper and make money and stuff like that, sure, he can make his way up. I could say, fighting one fight a year, I could see him making his way up into the top 20, top 15 UFC fighters, but it would happen probably within the next 4 to 5 years, and a lot of guys would have to slide off, retire, and stuff like that in order for him to slide up. Because, like I said, there are guys out there who are a lot more active on the roster and stuff. Big ups to him for being as talented as he is and is making his money and stuff and getting his money and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he needs to pick a lane, whether he's just making money or trying to make a run at UFC Gold. He's gonna have to figure that out. Anyway, UFC fighter Sean Strickland says that Pat Barry is a predator for his relationship with Rose Namajunas, the former women's UFC champion. He made the same accusation against Jim West, who's in a relationship with Aspen Ladd, and the reason he said those things is, these guys train these girls from pretty young ages. I believe Aspen Ladd may have been in her early teens when she first met Jim West and started really training under him, and Rose Namajunas, I believe, met him when she was around 12 or 13 years old or something like that. And so Pat was 27 when she first met Rose Namajunas. So I don't necessarily know the ins and the outs of the relationships and the timelines and stuff like that. I didn't really look into it and stuff. I mean, but I can definitely see why, because with the stuff that I've read about it and the stuff that I've heard and stuff, it does sound kind of it does sound kind of suspect. You know what I mean? Like they were grown ass men who ended up training young girls to be mixed martial artists who they later became romantically involved with. I mean, can I say that they're grooming these girls? I don't know. I mean, there's two sides to every story, and I can't sit here and pick sides. You know what I mean? It does look bad though. You know what I mean? When you have a grown ass man who has known a girl from her adolescent years and stuff like that, going from like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 on up and everything like that. Like, he's known this girl for that long and everything. And it lends itself to, how long did their romantic relationship go on before they made it public? You know what I mean? How long were they messing around and fooling around before things were? I mean, Rose Namajunas is not that old, is a fairly young woman, and Aspen Ladd is even younger. I think Aspen Ladd is probably isn't older than like 25 or 26 or something like that. I know for sure she's not older than 28. Rose Namajunas, I believe, is around 28, in her mid to late 20s, maybe going on 30 and stuff like that. But like I said, these were young women and everything, and I think we need to be, the reason I mention is because I think we need to be careful throwing around that term instead of, be careful throwing around that term and instead, actually look at their relationship and see if the women are all right. You know what I mean? Like, I understand wanting to raise the question. I understand, but to throw around that accusation and stuff like that, like I said, there's two sides to every story. And I'm not sitting here advocating for perverts and people who are grooming. Like, I'm not saying that at all. Like, this could have been both of these instances could have been a relationship where, like I said, they spent close proximity to each other for long periods of time and stuff like that. They have the same goals, aspirations, and stuff like that. They spend a lot of time doing the same sorts of things. They have a lot in common, and eventually the relationship grows and evolves and everything. And, these girls had to come of age at some point. Right? They had to start become an adult at some point. And so, when they became an adult, like I said, if this relationship carried on, and matured when these women were adults, I mean, yeah, as soon as these girls went from girls to being adults and stuff like that, then I can say, I can't really, you know what I mean? Like, I can't really fault anybody for doing, because they're adults. They're allowed to make their own decisions. They're allowed to make their own choices. It's their body and stuff like that. We can't sit here and be like, oh, they're not an adult because they were only 18. Well, that's an adult. By law, legal definition, that is an adult. That is an adult that can go out and sign a contract. That is an adult that can go vote, join the military. Like, that adult that's a full-grown adult at that point. And I understand that made some people like, oh, that's too young for somebody of older ages to be dating it, but that's two consenting adults. I can't really throw my weight around in that conversation. Now, personally, I wouldn't be wanting to mess around with anybody that young and be in that type of scenario just because of the optics of it. You know what I mean? Like, it would make me feel uncomfortable to be under that kind of scrutiny, especially if I knew this girl prior to, in her adolescent years when she was in grade school and stuff like that, and middle school and high school, and you know what I mean? Like, it would raise too many questions, and it's just a situation that I wouldn't want to find myself in. But like I said, like we can't. But like I think we should be careful when we're throwing around those labels and stuff, because sometimes relationships happen. They're innocent and everything like that. And I'm not trying to, like I said, advocate for perverts. I'm not trying to sit here and say that men don't groom girls from young ages. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not even saying that wasn't the case in this scenario. I'm just saying that we need to be careful with throwing around those labels and stuff like that, and instead just take the time to make sure that the women in those relationships are okay, and that they are being cared for in a manner that is respectful to them, and that is conducive to a healthy relationship. You know what I mean? Like, if people feel like she's being coerced or that kind of stuff, then they can start saying that kind of putting that kind of stuff out there and being like, look, like maybe we should find somebody to intervene and find out what's really going on, or maybe we should talk to her separate from Pat or something. You know what I mean? Like, if there's something there that people really need to fixate on, it's whether these women are okay, and instead of just throwing the predator label on somebody, because no one knows the ins and the outs except the people who are involved, right? And like I said, I'm not advocating for perverts. Like, I think, there are people out there who are grooming girls from young ages to believe certain things and stuff like that. And, R. Kelly, like, he deserved to be in jail. Bill Cosby, all these sexual predators, all these fucking people, they all deserve to be in jail. They all deserve to be locked up and stuff like that. But I'm also not somebody who's quick to just kind of throw around labels and kind of get that kind of stuff stirred up, because I don't know. You know what I mean? If I had found out that Pat Berry was fucking around with her when she was 16, 17, yeah, then I might want to say, you know what, that was an inappropriate relationship. That's some sick shit. This dude needs to not be, they need, you know what I'm saying? Like, then I can sit there and say, like, hey, that shit shouldn't have been going on. Same with Jim West, but I don't necessarily know that. Like, if that comes out, then I can make a decision and be like, yeah, they're predators. They wanted young girls. They have these young girls and stuff like that. And who knows how long it's going to be before they get tired of the girls that they're with and start training other girls and stuff like that. I mean, that Larry Nassar guy got away with groping and touching girls and having inappropriate relationships with these girls for a long period of time and shit like that, because people just dismissed the allegations and everything. But like I said, if stuff starts coming out where they were messing with these girls and they were underage, but like I said, until that time comes out, I'm going to reserve my judgment in that predator label and say that, we need to just make sure that Rose and Aspen are in healthy relationships with these men, and that they're not being, taken advantage of or coerced and stuff like that, especially because they have that dynamic of being fighter and manager, fighter and corner person and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very tumultuous relationship in and of itself, because, the fighter and the trainer, that relationship has its ups and its downs and its highs and its lows, just like any relationship. It's a stressful relationship because you're there on the fighter's best day, you're there on the fighter's worst day, and either way, the trainer's job is to push them through that, and that can carry over into their relationship, you know what I mean, into a personal relationship. And so, it's a very precarious line to walk and stuff. I mean, that's another aspect of it that, I want to reserve judgment on, because while I don't necessarily say it's a bad thing that you're in a relationship with the person who's training you or in your corner and stuff like that, because that support system is greatly needed, do I necessarily believe that it should happen? I don't know. I don't necessarily know that. I think that there are some aspects of life that, should remain separate, but then I have to consider the fact that there are husbands and wives out there who, married couples out there, whatever, partners, whatever, who are in a romantic relationship, who are successfully running some businesses and things like that. So, like I said, it's a fine line to walk, but either way, that's up to them. But I reserve my judgment in, throwing those labels around. Next topic. Nets GM says that the Nets are looking to keep players or find players that are all in for the team. That was the gist of his conversation. I mean, his statement to the public, to the press and everything. And Kyrie posted some tweet with Mr. Miyagi or something like that and tried to be snide or cute. And personally, I thought it was childish. But, if I'm the Nets, I'm moving on from Kyrie Irving. The truth of the matter is that Kyrie Irving was a huge part of their plans for, title contention, that playoff championship run, and he basically killed it all with his selfishness. Now, I can applaud. I can appreciate that people want to, be more vocal about causes that they think matter to them and stuff like that. But the mask mandate, the vaccine mandate, like that wasn't a hill for anyone to die on, right? And because the simple truth of the matter is that those mandates were designed to protect people, just like seatbelts, no smoking, people not allowed to smoke indoors and stuff like that. There are a lot of rules and regulations out there and guidelines that are designed to keep people safe in less than ideal situations and conditions and everything. And this is that situation. Now, like I said, I can appreciate that people want to be more vocal and stuff, but this wasn't the hill for Kyrie Irving to die on. So basically, he took it upon himself to sit out in protest of all the people who were losing their jobs, again, to the vaccine mandates and mask mandates and all that kind of crap and stuff. And quite frankly, he didn't sacrifice anything because as far as I know, he still collected the majority of the money he was owed for this season, even though he didn't play for the most of the season, right? All those people who got fired, they didn't have jobs and they have to find new jobs. They got to find, you know what I'm saying? So like, what did he do? What did he sacrifice in solidarity for them except the team's aspirations for a title shot? He made the decision for his entire team and organization that they weren't going to make a title run because he had something more important to do. He signed a contract to be out there and play basketball, and they let him have his space. They let him do his thing. Just like when he needed, I think it was last season or the season before, when he needed just some random-ass time off from playing. They gave him that random-ass time off from playing. So it's like they've been more than accommodating with this man who signed a contract to go out here and play basketball, and he hasn't played a lot of basketball. Between injuries and just needing time off and shit like that, he has not played a lot of basketball. I believe he's been in the league, 11 years? And 6 of those 7 years, he's played, 60 games or less? So it's like, what are these teams really paying for when they pay for a Kyrie Irving type player, a Kyrie Irving type personality? And then this man has the audacity to sit out an entire season and then turn around and talk about he wants a $250 million 5-year contract extension. If I were the Nets, I would be looking to wash my hands of this man as quickly as possible because he is a cancer. Amari Stoudemire even came out and said that Kyrie missing the majority of the season messed up a lot of the chemistry that the team would have had he been there out on the court. And I agree with that. I said it back a few weeks ago on the podcast and stuff like that early on when the season was still going and Kyrie was still sitting out and stuff like that. I said it's going to sacrifice the chemistry because now you're going to have guys who are stepping up and being in the rotation, going from not being in the rotation to being coming off the bench and stuff like that. So they're not going to get as many touches and everything. They're not going to have as many opportunities to get that jump shot on and everything. So like I said, and that carried into the playoffs just like I predicted. They got bounced out. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised in the slightest. And then you watch his performance in one of the games. He's got his hands on his hips. They're in the final 5 minutes. They're down a couple of points. They're down like maybe 10 points or something like that. But it wasn't like they couldn't come back. It was inside 5 minutes. They had a chance to come back. But Kyrie Irving's got his hands on his hips. He's not hustling up and down the court and everything. And he even admitted during a press conference that he was kind of tired and not in that great of basketball shape. So what was this guy doing all this offseason? And so like I said, if I'm the Nets, I'm looking to get away from Kyrie Irving as soon as possible. Right? Like, I'm fielding as many offers to trade him for whatever I can get in return. I don't care what I have to do to get rid of this man. I'm trying to get rid of him because he's toxic to the team. And I'm sure that there are teammates out there who have more to say about the situation, but because they're teammates, they have to stand on the side with the team and be like, we're not going to come out here and publicly disparage him. We're not going to do this, that, and the third. It's just like Amari Stoudemire. I'm sure Amari Stoudemire has some sort of respect for Kyrie Irving, And I feel like his statement to the public was a lot less harsh than it would have been if it was a conversation that they were having in private. Because Amari Stoudemire said, yeah, him sitting out was a big factor in the team's chemistry and stuff like that, and sure as shit it was. He also said James Harden work ethic sucked. So it's like there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we didn't see that I pretty much I'm not going to sit here and say that James Harden, the James Harden not work ethic thing was something I saw, but at the end of the day, like I knew that this whole Nets franchise was not going to get a championship title this season. And so hearing all this stuff now, it's like, if I'm the Nets, I'm either seriously consider rebuilding because I have to get rid of Kyrie and KD because KD doesn't want to play in Brooklyn without Kyrie. I'm looking to break whatever's going on there because this does not bode well for them going into next season. It doesn't. Anyway, John Gruden's lawsuit against the NFL, specifically Roger Goodell, is set to move forward. And for those of you who haven't heard, John Gruden is suing the NFL, Commissioner Roger Goodell, because he says the emails were leaked intentionally in order to, force John to quit. There was pressure to get John to quit and stuff like that. And so they leaked the emails to make it happen, to force his hand and make him resign and stuff like that. And honestly, I don't believe he has a leg to stand on in the conversation. First of all, the emails were part of an investigation into the misconduct into the Washington Redskins, right? There's 650,000 emails to somebody that they were looking through, and they found those emails. Okay, so do I think that the NFL did this intentionally to have John Gruden fired? No, because that's 650,000 emails that they were going through, that they had access to, that they had to go through for an investigation. That means that there were probably up to 10 people who had access to those emails, 10 or more people who had access to those emails, because one person is not going to be able to comb through 650,000 emails by themselves, right? Like that's just not happening. So they probably broke that up into groups of people and stuff like that, and groups of people had opportunities to have eyes on these emails, and there's probably somebody in those groups of people who had access to those emails and leaked them, right? Like I find it more plausible that there was somebody who saw those emails and got offended by them and leaked those emails versus Roger Goodell on some personal axe to grind to get John Gruden fired, right? Like that's what I feel about it. So that's why the first thing that I don't think he has a leg to stand on in the argument, because there's too many hands in that process, to sit there and say that it was specifically Roger Goodell who did it. Second of all, why was Roger Goodell trying to pressure John Gruden to quit or be fired or whatever it was? Like what precipitated that? Right? Like, was there some personal beef and everything? Like, are we going to sit here and say that Roger Goodell knew that John Gruden was a racist or a homophobe or a bigot or whatever you want to call it and stuff like that, and he wanted him out of the coaching position and stuff like, and that's why he had the axe to grind, and that's a bad thing? Like, I'm not understanding what the personal vendetta Roger Goodell had against John Gruden could possibly be. Right? Like, why was there pressure for John Gruden to quit? And then, are we saying that that Roger Goodell saw these emails and didn't like the way that John Gruden talked about him in those emails and decided, oh, I'm going to leak these emails so he gets fired or has to quit and stuff? Like, I'm not understanding where this vendetta, what this you know what I mean? Like, if I were the commissioner of the NFL and I had seen those emails, the first thing I would have done was show them to the leadership of the Raiders and let them know that John Gruden is a liability to their team, to the NFL, and everything like that with his kind of language. And if they don't do something to fire him or have him resign from his post immediately, these emails will be made public information. Because he has the power to do that, especially when you're talking about, I have them, they're part of a public investigation into misconduct, and we're trying to clean the NFL up, and John Gruden's over here sending these inappropriate emails and stuff like that. And based on the context, it does sound like John Gruden might be a homophobe, it might be a little bit racist and stuff like that. And I'm not saying either way that he is or he isn't, because people talk how they talk behind closed doors when they're in their comfortable zones with people and stuff, and that doesn't make them one way or the other. It just means that they don't give a shit about what people have to say about the way that they talk. Now, I will say that John Gruden was stupid for putting that stuff in email, in writings for somebody to find, right? Like, you're using company property to send those emails and stuff like that, and that's not good, because your company email is not private, right? Like, that's company property. They can use that to make cases against you. Like, if they fire you, if they fire you and then, you try to sue them for probable cause, or they try to sue you for probable cause, they can go back through your emails and pull up all the emails that had nothing to do with work, all the emails that you were doing, all the stuff that you were doing on your personal on the company computer and stuff like that, and turn it over as evidence as to reasons they fired you. They didn't even have to know that you spent 10 hours a day on Facebook. They didn't even have to know that you spent 10 hours a week on Facebook, 2 hours a day, every day on Facebook during work hours and stuff like that, while you're supposed to be working, spending there on Facebook, posting and stuff. They didn't even have to know that. They could have just fired you and found out after the fact, because they looked at your computer logs and your records and everything like that, files you accessed and your browsing history and stuff. Like, all of that stuff is company property. And John Gruden sending those emails to somebody's work email, like I said, it doesn't make it any less private. It doesn't make it any more private. You're sending that information to a private server and stuff like that. They can subpoena all that information. They can get all that information. Right? And what was Roger Goodell doing? What would Roger Goodell have done wrong? If he had been like, gave him that ultimatum and been like, y'all need to fire him or I'm going to make these emails public knowledge. And that we're mounting an investigation into his email accounts and stuff like that, and what stuff is being said, and what kind of workplace environment he leads, because they're trying to clean up the NFL. They're trying to clean up the image. They're trying to clean up the image inside and out. So, no, I don't believe that somebody like Roger Goodell intentionally leaked those emails. I believe that somebody did intentionally leak those emails, but I don't believe it was a directive from Roger Goodell. I don't believe it was a hatchet job by the NFL and stuff like that because of any sort of PR stunt or anything like that. I mean, if anything, like I said, if Roger Goodell had those emails and really wanted to do something with them, he would have. He didn't have to go behind closed doors to do it. Right? He could have just went to the press and be like, we found some disturbing emails to the Washington Redskins from John Gruden, this, that, and the third, supporting evidence that they might be okay with a toxic work environment. Right? Like, he would have been well within his rights and within bounds. So John Gruden suing, acting like he's some victim here. He's not a fucking victim. He's somebody who got caught saying some shit behind closed doors that he didn't want nobody else to hear. Because I can almost certainly guarantee you he didn't want, if he wouldn't say none of that stuff on air, while he was doing any of his broadcasting stuff, I guarantee you he wouldn't make any of those comments on air. Why? Because he knows it's wrong. He chose to say all that stuff in private and everything like that. And like I said, I'm not saying he's racist or homophobic or anything either way. Some people talk how they talk and they don't care about words and they just use words to describe things and stuff. And I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other. But I definitely can say that he sounded racist and homophobic, and that, he probably should, find out, how he can curtail some of the damage and really fix his image and stuff like that, and stop trying to sue the NFL, because at this point he just looks bad. He just looks bad. Playing the victim because somebody found out that he says some bad shit behind closed doors. And like I said, I mean, I understand we all say shit behind closed doors, and that's not what this argument's about. I'm not sitting here trying to discuss the merits of what you say behind closed doors, locker room talk, all that shit. Like, that's between you and your maker. But when you start putting stuff in writing and you put it on in digital and out in print, and then people get their hands on it and make it public information, there's nothing you can do about it. And you're not a victim. You're not a victim. If you wouldn't say it to people in public and everything like that, or you wouldn't say it in front of a mixed crowd, you wouldn't say it on national television, then you shouldn't have been saying it behind email and behind closed doors and text messages and shit like that. Because especially when you're in the public's eye, everything is under scrutiny. You're always being watched. And that's all. And so, like I said, I hope John Gruden loses this lawsuit, and I hope he just goes away quietly and shit like that. Finds something else to do. If he rehabilitates his image and finds his way back into public good graces and stuff like that, cool, so be it. But I'm not going to sit here and shed a tear either way for this lawsuit against him. You know what I mean? For this lawsuit, if he loses it anyway. So last topic, Shaq defends Tom Brady for his potential $375 million 10-year contract with Fox Sports to be an analyst. Shaq says he deserves that money. Some people are saying it's too much money for this, that, and the third reason. And you know, I agree. It is a stupidly large amount of money for somebody to just get up and talk about football, you know, during the football season and stuff like that. Like, I completely understand how that does seem like a ridiculous amount of money. And do I think that Tom Brady deserves that money? I think Tom Brady deserves that money as much as somebody who scrubs toilets, teaches kids, you know, drives school buses, drives transfer trucks, deserves a livable wage, right? Like, if Tom Brady deserves $375 million just to sit up there and talk on TV for 10 years, then the person teaching kids and scrubbing toilets and driving school buses and transfer trucks and all that shit, they deserve $375 million a year. That's how I see it. And so, you know, I'm not a hater on Tom Brady. Big ups to him for getting that big money and stuff like that, securing his financial future and you know, having a job after football and stuff and having something to do after football. Big ups to him for that. But, you know, like I said, like, I don't care either way. I just think it's ridiculous that, you know, we will praise these people to make $375 million, but then turn around and complain to a school teacher that she probably just needs to do better with her money instead of getting them more money. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only gripe that I would have in that argument. But like I said, big ups to Tom Brady for landing that big deal. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of money, but who am I to judge and say anything more about that than that? All right. So that's my episode. Thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Again, thanks for all the birthday wishes. Catch me next week, guys. Peace.